I would like to welcome you all to the communications meeting for the beginning of the semester. And without any further ado, I'm going to turn the meeting into the hands of Doug Young.
Thank you very much. Just to start off our agenda tonight, a couple of recent highlights and achievements to report as we begin the school year. We just learned recently, and Pat, I'm sure you could speak to this more than I can, that we've been identified as LEED Gold certified for both of our high schools, and we'll be having a ceremony in October to acknowledge that accomplishment. And there was a lot of work on the part of our operations team and district staff to help make that happen. We had our Moment of Integration event this past week, and if you had an opportunity to be there and experience some of it, whether it was the program at Ardmore Avenue or the program at Lower Moraine High School, it was quite a memorable event. The students who participated in the program were outstanding, and a lot of that program and the coverage of that program will be on our website. Some of it already is. If you haven't had a chance to take a look, please visit the Moment of Integration section of our website. And as a reminder, that was the commemorating the 50th anniversary of the closing of the Ardmore Avenue School and effectively integrating the elementary schools in Lower Merion School District back in 1963. We are in the process of getting information from the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. We get that every year around this time and find out how many students have been identified as semifinalists and commended. And although I cannot report the official numbers yet because I'm not allowed to, it's on a hold until I think the end of the month. I can tell you that the numbers once again are fit to make us proud, and the number of students who have qualified as either commended or semifinalist students slightly ahead of, as a percentage basis, of what we've had in the past, but right in line with that. And we've had a really successful school opening. That just checking in with the different principals, a lot of good stuff happening at the schools. I know back to school night is happening tonight, I believe, for Welsh Valley, so a lot of back to school events happening. Moving to the second bullet, updated school safety procedures. Just a couple things from my perspective on the communications front. We have added signage at all of the schools as people enter, kind of as a reminder of some of our new procedures, which include verbal communication before anyone enters the building. You have to buzz in and speak with school personnel in the office, and have to be able to present ID as well. So just a couple of things that are important in terms of following through with the recommendations of the School Safety Task Force. I don't know if you wanted to expand upon that.
Just a couple of items. One thing that is of interest to people who maybe don't have kids in schools is that 7 of our 10 schools had secure entrances already, meaning that when you entered the building, you were in the office or in a vestibule that had controlled access. But 3 of our buildings did not. So in 3 of our buildings, when you were buzzed in, you had access to the full building, and you were directed to go to the office, but in at least a couple of instances, there was no line of sight to the office from the front door. So Ballackinwood is the best example of that. Ballackinwood is a very large building, and the school office was in the center of the building, far away from the front door. So as a result of our review of school safety procedures and the work that the task force did, and Diane was on the task force, other members of Subo, you were on the task force, other members of the community and the administration and school people volunteered. Your wife was on the task force. We really spent months going over a whole lot of issues, but then the board did make a commitment to move those entrances and move those offices. So Ballackinwood, the main office, is completely moved. It's fully operational, and where the office was, we're in the process of making that into classrooms as part of our enrollment growth area, so we're not losing classrooms by moving the office to the front door. So that's a controlled access point. Penn Valley has a small office that was built in the lobby now, so there's controlled access at Penn Valley, and at Penn Wynn, we relocated, switched the office with a kindergarten room that already had an outside door to give us controlled access and make that the main office, and we're doing that in 2 stages. Next year, we'll actually move the principal's office over and the conference room over and move the other kindergarten over. So we did invest in that. The other thing that has become an issue of concern, and I talked about this yesterday at ISC, is that all schools do a series of safety drills, and you know, when I was in school, we actually did fire drill and retention drill, which was a bomb shelter kind of thing where you went in the hallway away from the glass, and that seems quaint today, but since Columbine, we've been and other school violent incidents, all of us in schools have done shelter-in-place drills, and those have been effective in terms of making sure that kids go someplace where they are safe and where they are locked in. What we learned in our review and the work of the School Safety Task Force was that shelter-in-place is not always the best option, and so there needs to be another option, which is that we would need to evacuate quickly. And in this case of Sandy Hook, when they evacuated the building, they evacuated, but they went to all different places because they didn't have a relocation point. This is you know, tough stuff to think about, but it also just happened again in August in Georgia, and the kids eventually got redirected and they ended up at a Walmart in nearby. But when we started this school year off, internally we communicated to all of our staff members a single relocation point, so that if there ever was a time when we needed to do an immediate evacuation of a school, not an orderly evacuation like the heater went off and we're going to you know, send kids from one school to another school for the day, but a time when we needed to get out and walk somewhere. All faculty members have been informed of a relocation site. And so we're working with the police department and some Montgomery County safety people to look at our drills overall this year, and we will be making some other changes. There are some other recommendations in that task force report that are going to come back to the board, but we're trying to maintain a balance where we are welcoming of parents and visitors to the schools, but with that we have as much of a controlled environment as possible. And so those are some pretty major changes that have occurred, and we're very fortunate that we had the resources and that the board supported the resources to make the buildings safer, and you know, that's not the case in many places.
Thanks, Dr. McGinley. And tonight we will have a presentation on enrollment growth and the expanded choice proposal, but welcome to the members of the Federation of Civics who are with us tonight, and all members of the public. There is an extensive public process planned over the next few months to provide information on this proposal and to solicit public feedback. And this is just one meeting in a series of meetings, but please, you know, feel free to contact us through our community comments at lmsd.org account with any questions and comments that you may have regarding this process. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. McGinley for the presentation. Yep.
So as Doug said, Mike, can you turn on the projector? Will come on? Okay. We have had a series of meetings last spring where we talked about high school enrollment, and in the course of those meetings, members of the board and members of the public requested additional information. Questions were raised about enrollment projections, costs of utilizing existing facilities, and cost of accommodating kids in high school were also raised as areas of concern where the board had the need for additional information. And as a result of the request for additional information, we decided to postpone the timeline to this fall and lay out a timeline to have those conversations. And we'll be having one of those conversations tomorrow morning in the Facilities Committee meeting about construction costs and possible use of our buildings to accommodate kids in high school. So what we wanted to do this evening was just go over very briefly, and I'll emphasize briefly, the presentation that was done on Monday night. And if you were here on Monday night, you know that Vic Orlando did an exquisite job going line by line in a table. And we're not going to ask him to repeat that. But we are going to ask him just to highlight a couple of things that were going on. So this was our agenda from Monday evening, and we're going to do an abbreviated version of that agenda. This is where we are in the process. This is the Communications Committee meeting on the 18th. Tomorrow morning is the Facilities Committee meeting. And we will be reporting on a variety of facilities issues. Not all of the facilities issues will be addressed tomorrow because there are issues like the traffic study that are not yet complete. There are issues around parking where we have some information but not all information. And that's the reason why we're taking September and October to assemble the information, complete the information, and share the information. And the schedule of upcoming meetings is on the website. This meeting is being recorded, as are other meetings where we are discussing high school enrollment, and we will be doing that up until the time when there is a scheduled vote on November 18th around this issue. So today is the 10th day, and 10th day is our official enrollment in the school district. The reason why we take it on a particular day is so that we really have a solid apples-to-apples comparison. And so the new information that we'll go over again on Monday, but the new information that I'll share today is that we are 177 students ahead of last year's 10th day enrollment overall. So it was growth, not as large a growth as last year, but still significant growth from one year to the next. And the high schools are just 10 students ahead of last year. The middle schools are 10 total, high schools. The middle schools are 58 students ahead of last year, and the elementary schools are 109 students ahead of last year. So that's really the only new information that we'll share tonight. This graph shows the enrollment projections. This presentation is on the website. The solid line is the enrollment projection for each of the elementary schools. The dotted line is the actual. And the same thing for the middle schools. The solid line is the projection, and the dotted line is the actual. This one, for example, shows Ballackinwood in blue, and they are just about where we thought they would be, and Walsh Valley is running ahead. And this is the high school with Harrison being just about where we thought they would be, and Lower Merion running slightly ahead. So with that, we're going to ask Vic to do the short version of what does this chart say.
Okay. I will briefly just go over a few charts. As we noted last night, the 17-18 column is highlighted. This would be, if expanded choice was implemented, the first full year of impact of expanded choice would be in the 17-18 school year. In the 14-15 year, that would just be the first year of choice. There would be minimal impact in that particular year. Looking at the first line, this is the Dijon Healy original numbers. These are based upon the current boundaries that are in place. And the only thing I think else to note here is that the high schools will exceed capacity within the next 5 years. The Dijon no choice, if there was no choice, no walk zone, and use a strict feeder pattern from Walsh Valley going to Harriton and BC Middle School going to Lower Merion, this is what the numbers would look like. And we usually doing this for a data verification process, and it's something that's not under consideration, but something we thought for data process was important to show. Looking at Dijon Healy, no choice and a BC adjustment. This is basically taking the top number, Dijon no choice. We looked at a BC adjustment based upon some factors that have changed over the years. The Dijon was based on a 10-year historical number, and with some of the different enhancements to and changes at Harriton, we made an adjustment about 15 students. I believe that Dr. Marseille will review those issues. And then we looked at the expanded choice options. If we had a 60-40 split, a 50-50 split, and a 40-60 split, what would those numbers look like? So we took the total expanded choice students, based on the walk zone and the proposed expanded choice area, took 40% of those from Harrington High School and had them attend Lower Merion. So if you look in briefly just the first year, the 14-15 year, in the expanded choice and the walk zone, there's 353 students. If 40% of those attended Lower Merion, that'd be 141 students. It reduces the no choice line down by 141. So it'd be 1,213 students. So you take the 1,354 minus the 141, and that's how we got to that number. That increases the Lower Merion by 141. We use that same methodology throughout all the years. The next line, the 50-50, we took those students, and there's 120 students that would be in the 14-15 year would be eligible for the walk zone and the expanded choice. That would be a 50-50 split. The other 233 students are the current 9th, 10th, 11th graders who are called pre-expanded choice, would apply the 60-40 split, so the 40% would be adjusted to those. That gives you the 153 students, reduces the Harrington number in the 14-15 down to 1,201, increases the Lower Merion by 153 students. And that same methodology is throughout. And then we come down to the 40-60 split. Again, we took the 120 students I mentioned in the prior line, applied a 60% ratio to that, which ends up being 72 students, and then we took, again, those 9th, 10th, and 11th graders currently, applied the 40% ratio to that, which is 93 students, comes out to 165, gets reduced from the Dijon no choice line, and that gives you 1,189. Those get added to the Lower Merion. We use that same methodology throughout the chart. Okay. One thing that we did do, we had a third-party demographer look through our numbers, because we're not demographers, but we did have somebody, George Sundell from Sundance Associates. He was here on Monday night, and he reviewed the charts and some other data related to the charts, and his report is on the website in detail, so I won't read through his his report, but he has three different things. He looked at our methodology, our accuracy and conclusion, and for his report, he basically said we have an acceptable methodology that was consistent with what Dijon Healy did in their report. So again, you can read that in more detail online.
The next part of the meeting on Monday evening was actually done by the high school principals, and each principal talked a little bit.
That's follow-up questions from Monday, or would I have questions from the board?
Well,
I forgot that we're, just a couple of follow-up things.
I'm not the chair of the committee, so.
Well, I don't know, but then are we having questions, this follow-up questions from Monday, or this is just a presentation? Okay, thanks.
So the high school principals discussed the enrollments at the high schools. Mr. Eveslag talked about the enrollment at Harrington, what it had been prior to the opening of the new building, and the change in the high school enrollment areas. And he explained that the enrollment in 2008 was 791 students, and the enrollment in 2013 was 1,186 students. He also reviewed the differences in the level of the course offerings that we were able to provide at Harrington when the school had less than 800 students and when it has over 1,100 students, which of course was the goal of having comparable programs at each of the schools. And he pointed out that in 2008 there were 15 AP courses. Today there are 20. There were 31 honors courses. Today there are 60. And that in 2008, Harrington offered a partial complement of the high school courses that were offered at Lower Merion, but not all of the courses. And now we actually have one single planning guide for the district because the courses are offered at both high schools. And he also being detail-oriented, said that not every course runs every year based on student interest, but all the courses are offered at both high schools. He talked specifically about growth in some of the programs. In 2008, 77 students were in the IB program. Today, 196 kids are in the IB program, and that represented 15% of the juniors and seniors in the IB diploma program in 2008, and now it is 19.8% of the juniors and seniors. And in 2008, 19 diplomas were earned, and last year, 51 diplomas were earned, 8 of them being bilingual. And there are additional IB courses that are offered online. So we spent some time going over some of those changes. And one of the changes was that in 2008, there was no dual enrollment program at Harriton, and now there is a dual enrollment program in partnership with Penn State, and it affords students an opportunity to earn college-level credits while they're in high school, and both IB and the dual enrollment program are programs that are open to students who, no matter where they live in the school district. Then Mr. Eveslag identified the list of courses that have been added at Harriton High School since 2008. And a small number of these courses were added at both schools. These are not all exclusive to Harriton, but for the most part, these are courses that ran at LM and did not run at Harriton, and that includes both 2 pages worth of offerings. And then he pointed out the differences in the athletic programs. In 2008, the Harriton High School was in the Del Val League, and there were some places, particularly in girls' sports, where not all the schools in the league. He gave the example of the fact that girls lacrosse, there were only a couple of other schools that had girls lacrosse teams in the Del Val League, and so in some areas, kids played a truncated schedule, not a full season. Today, Harriton High School's in the Central League, and they've added some more 9th grade sports. They have their own hockey team, and the facilities at the school are supporting success, and the school also has had a lot of victories and a couple state championships, and we're really pleased with that. At that point, we transitioned over to Mr. Hughes, and he talked about the fact that Lower Merion at one point had an enrollment over 1,600 students, and that after redistricting with the intention of reducing the high school population at Lower Merion High School, that was achieved, and that the population declined for a few years and then kind of leveled off. And he gave an example of the number of students that were accommodated at Lower Merion High School. These numbers all represent kids being in the old building, which, as Mr. Ganam may point out, was essentially the same size as the current building, but the current building has a lot of programmatic options and specific physical features that are great enhancements that make the capacity lower than what the old building was. The old building was classroom after classroom after classroom. This building is a variety of spaces, including things like the Black Box Theater, both schools, Black Box Theater, additional flexible space, large group instruction, and those sorts of things. So Mr. Hughes wanted to make sure that he made the point that it's a different building. It is some less kids, but it is still producing great results, and as both high schools are producing great results. He also talked about where are we right now, and if the choice is expanded for high school students and Lower Merion grows over the next few years, intentionally larger with a change in the high school choice area, how would that affect the school? It's a question that we asked him and that he and Dr. Marseille and others discussed and worked on. And so right now we have all of our classes in the Lower Merion High School main building, and with the exception of phys ed classes that are also here in this building. When this building was part of Lower Merion High School, a connected part of Lower Merion High School, it was referred to as Building A, and since we have moved offices into more of the space, we've been referring to it as the DAO building, District Administrative Office Building. But for the purpose of the presentation, he notes it as Building A as opposed to the main building. And so in Building A, there are 21 classrooms available, 14 on the third floor, 5 on the second floor, and 2 on the first floor. And we've had a couple different places where we've given slightly different counts on that. And one of the reasons is because we use a lot of those offices on this part of the second floor, a lot of those classrooms as offices. And so in a couple different times, we either counted or didn't count something because of its status as an office. So we have some flexibility, but 21 is the number. Moving into the 2015-16, with the assumption that enrollment growth occurs and choice is expanded, Lower Merion High School would utilize 4 classrooms on the first and second floor of Building A, this building, for content area electives. And those are classrooms that are available for use now. We have we had renovated large bathrooms in this building on the first and second floor, and kids already have access to this building because of the phys ed program. So in the 15-16 school year, based on the projections that you've already seen, we would anticipate using 4 classrooms on the first and second floor in this building. And then when we move to the 16-17 school building, we would begin to organize more 9th grade classes in this building. And so in the 16-17 year, it's not that the population increase justifies all of a sudden 8, but programmatically, we feel it would be better to put 8 classrooms in here for social studies and English classes as a way to begin to organize this as a place where 9th graders have a significant number of classes. And then once the full population was realized, we would utilize classrooms on the 3rd floor in Building A, and this would require some renovations, and we'll be talking about those things tomorrow. And we would build the student schedule so that about half of their day was in this building and about half of their day was in the main building. And we would offer the courses as listed. He pointed out the 9th grade schedule, or the 9th grade list of courses. Everything that we are talking about moving forward assumes the same offerings and the same kind of opportunities for our 9th graders at both buildings. And he also referenced some other things that we need to consider, is that when we would move students into this building, we would also have to locate some support services here. So when I first came here, Lower Merion had an additional, based on size, had an additional assistant principal, an additional counselor. As Lower Merion would grow, those things would have to be returned to the school, and we'd have to have some space over here where those functions would occur. We'd have to have a place for teachers to meet and plan and work in this building, and we would have to consider student supervision in this building because it would go well beyond the phys ed classes that we have today, and then student supervision going back and forth between the building at the change of classes. And that summarizes our presentation from Monday evening.
Thank you, Dr. McGinley. Is there anyone else from the administrators that has anything else to present? At this time, I'm going to open it up to the board members for discussion. Yes.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation this evening. And I encourage people to look at the website, since the detailed documents are on the website. I know that a lot of people here this evening, some of you may not have students currently in the school. So I just want to make sure a number of different points are clear. Dr. McGinley, when at this point right now, we are building 4 classrooms at Gladwin Elementary and an additional 4 classrooms at Penn Valley, correct?
Yeah, yes, 4 at Penn Valley, 4 at Gladwin, 12 at Welsh Valley, and with renovations, it's, is it 8 or 10 at, that we created within the walls of Bala Cynwyd?
Was an additional 6.
To, counting room 100?
Mm.
3, 4, 5.
In addition to making,
Oh, Mr. Ganant said there was an additional 6. I would beg to differ with you. Okay, minimally it's 7. Minimally it's 7, but I have to go back over it, yeah.
Okay, but the point is that in addition to, obviously, prior to discussing the high schools, we've talked about the elementary schools and the middle schools, and in addition to that, prior to that, we've been making changes within, I think, almost all of the elementary schools due to increasing numbers, like taking labs out, computer labs out,
Correct.
and these kinds of things. So this is
With
not.
the exception of Penn Win, up until this year,
Right.
we haven't really done any
So this is-
renovations. But in all of the elementary schools, as the population increased, 2009, 2010, 2011, we did everything we could to accommodate students and professional staff within the building. So yes, there are spaces that we've divided. There are things that had been used for storage where somebody has a desk and they work out of that area. That used to be a closet. And we have taken apart a couple different closets to make some small group instructional space. At all of the elementary schools, we've had those kind of modifications over the last few years. It was when we ran out of those options and the growth each summer continued that we came to the board and went out for the first study, the first demographic
So
study.
my only point being that this has been a longer process, and that before going out and building, we were reworking.
Right.
Exactly. And that I'm correct that there are 21 classrooms available in this building potentially, and there are no additional, there's not additional facilities at Harriton. And so when you talk about the Harriton number being 1,400 and the Lower Merion number being 1,400 prior, that's the sort of circumstances
Correct.
we're trying to deal with at this point in time. And so you have,
Right. So let me talk about that 1,400 number, because the schools were built for 1,250 students.
right,
But when the administrators in the buildings and Dr. Mercé and I, when we talked to the schools about what they thought they could accommodate in the building without modifying the program, and the schools were built for some very specific purposes. And one of them that isn't really apparent to most people is the opportunities for teachers to collaborate. So every department has a departmental planning center. So we think that we could get up to 1,400 kids and keep departmental planning centers, keep the flexible space. We don't have classes assigned to the Black Box Theater on a daily basis. But the Black Box Theater is available for people to work in, to do projects in, to work in over time. So those are big spaces that, that were created for specific purposes, and those purposes could continue.
right. And the direction that the board gave to the administration was to, look for ways, obviously, to maximize the efficiency of our spaces, but we were asking you to keep our class sizes within our targets and not significantly change, the educational programs. And so that was a overall direction from the board in trying to kind of figure out how to deal with the enrollment, shift. So one of the things we did not want to do, for example, was, increase the classroom, the numbers of children in classrooms at the elementary schools beyond our target areas. And so, those were sort of the conditions that the board asked the administration to deal with. And so at this point, what we're dealing with is that we have, we're building at these Penn Valley and Gladwin. We're building at Welsh Valley, and that Welsh Valley, based on the feeder patterns, feeds into Harriton, whereas Bala Cynwyd, which will have fewer students, feeds into the high school that actually has the classrooms, the 21 additional classrooms. That's the basic conditions we're dealing with at this point. And so, I just want to clarify that, and I want to also clarify that at this point, if we don't expand choice, thereby expanding the numbers at Lower Merion to use those 21 classrooms slowly. Our choices to do that are choices to potentially build at Harriton, to add buildings at Harriton. What will we, if we don't do that, if we don't do either of those things, then what will we be doing ultimately when the numbers hit 1,400 at Harriton? What will we have to do at that point?
Well, I think you described the options, and so there's a couple things I would clarify. There are 21 classrooms here. They're not all 21 ready to go, state of the
No,
art.
I understand that.
So there would need to be an
Yeah.
investment made in those. They physically exist. They are classrooms. We didn't put up walls and chop them up into
Right.
smaller spaces, even the ones that we use as offices. But they still need some work to be state of the art.
Right, and
21st
we're talking
century
about that at the
classrooms.
facilities meeting
Correct.
tomorrow, the cost
Right.
of that
So,
versus building.
given the
a heritage.
population, if the boundaries were to remain as they are in the John Healy projections, there would need to be some additional spaces at both high schools. So there's
Right.
some additional classrooms at both high schools that would be necessary over time.
Right, so, if we choose not to expand choice, then at Lower Marion High School, we would be
We would still need
using,
to
we would
use
still use
this
some of
building,
those
and we
classrooms.
would still need to do some renovation in this building.
And then
and
at
then
the
we
same
would-
time, we would actually have to
Yes.
build facilities
Yes.
at Harriton.
And that-
Otherwise, at this point, otherwise, if we don't do either of those things, then when Harriton hits 1,400, we will actually have to engage in redistricting in order to get those students here. If you don't build,
We couldn't continue the same program that we have in the high schools with more than 1,400 kids at Harriton.
and as I said, I'm going with the conditions that the board had given the administration, which is that we didn't radically change, our programs, nor were we going to radically increase the numbers of students. So given those parameters, which the board has given to you, then those are our options. Those are the three options that we have. We either expand choice now and gradually increase the numbers of kids. We build at Harriton so that we're prepared when the numbers go over 1,400 at Harriton, or we wait and do nothing and then have to bring a large number of kids over here to use the buildings, in which case we would have to redraw the boundary lines. Those are the three major
Well,
options.
at some point, yes, yeah.
Thank you, that was my question.
Yeah, I have a couple of points, couple of follow-up from last night.
Monday.
I had asked about the 75-25 presentation, and you indicated you were going to add that to, as another line. Just want to get some sense when that's going to be on the website.
I actually have that on the, I can show it to you and we can add it.
Okay,
But
and that
I
would-
do have it.
I mean, that's fine, if you put it on the website, or at least get us a
Okay.
copy. I don't need to see it this
Yeah,
second,
okay.
as long as it's on the website. The other thing, I guess, it may not be in agreement, when Jerry Novick raised the question regarding the John Healy number, the first number that they have, and whether it included the BC adjustment. And I thought about it last night, and my recollection is that I think for the first year, let's say Harriton was 1216, that number is inclusive of the BC adjustment. And there was some confusion whether it did or did not. So I just want clarification whether that number does.
And actually, Mrs. de Bonaventura sent that same question to us this afterune.
I guess I should read my emails more.
I don't know if it was a group one or not, because I was kind of on the road most of the day, but, what we want to make sure that we do is answer that question, but we don't want to answer it off the cuff. We want to go back over and review
Okay.
and check data. There are some ways to check it, and I have in my mind a couple ways to check that I think are accurate, but I don't want to do that without talking to Vic and without then also checking with George Sundell. There's a way to check it.
And also, I guess,
And
check with
and Diane
John
laid out a
Healy.
couple of issues connected to that
Okay.
that would also give us kind of a direction in terms of checking it. So we don't want to answer it off the cuff.
And I just want to follow up on some points that were raised by Melissa during her questions. First, if the decision is made maybe to build at Harriton, you said that we still would have to do work at the DAOL. But correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was that during the work that was done at this building, the first and second floor were mapped out. The bathrooms are in. It's the third floor where the bulk of the work would then need to be done. And if we don't expand the choice, the amount of rooms that would need to be utilized in this facility would be less. So the question
Yes.
is, would the first and second floor, where the work has already been done, be sufficient to meet those needs?
What was done on the first and second floor, and when we bid out this project, we had a core project, and we had a number of options. And so one of the options was to upgrade the HVAC on the second and third floors. And that option was not selected. So the bathrooms were done, and we have heat on the second floor, so we have offices up there, and we have window air conditioning. But it's Mr. Ganan's opinion that if this was to be utilized with hundreds of kids in it rather than a small number of staff members, that we would need to do that HVAC work in order to use those classrooms. And I'm not sure if we would be able to, even if, let's say, half of the kids were here and half the kids were Harrison, and we built, 6 or 8 classrooms, whatever we had to build over there. I'm not sure that we can do all of that on the first and second floor.
Now, the other issue, I thought you said there were wall units that were on the second and third floor.
We have
They're air conditioned, but they're done.
The window units.
They're
Yeah.
window units, but not, so there is some air conditioning that's in. Okay.
Yes.
Carrie, I just want to clarify, I think we should look into that. I wasn't saying they would be used exactly the same way, but that the building would be used.
It was more of
Okay, I
a question
just wanna be clear
response
what I
to
was-
a response of
Yeah.
Dr. McGinley. And then the other point, get my doctors mixed up. Melissa raised the issue that we're adding on, I think it was 12 classrooms at Welsh Valley,
Right.
which would seem to be that school's growing quicker, but not all those students under with the current walk zone, go to Harridan.
Correct.
So even though it may have a larger population now, it doesn't translate that the number of students going to Harridan will be greater than possibly what's going to be, say, sorry.
Yeah, but they're like, Gladwin has had the largest amount of growth, and the kids that go to
Right,
Gladwin
it's a feeder too.
go to Harriton
Okay.
without a choice of opting into LM.
The 109 students that for the 10-day enrollment for the elementary schools, do you have a
Yes.
breakdown? I know we've gotten something, I just don't know off the top of my head how that breaks down between the 6 elementary schools too.
I had those numbers texted to me so I could share them tonight, and we'll have that complete report in the packet on Friday, but we haven't finished it. Today was the 10th day, and so we do
Okay.
have it. We have that, and I'll give it
But
to you.
Gladwin is something like over north of 700, right?
Yes,
But I'm talking about the
Yeah.
10-day enrollment, I'm talking about the increase. I'm not
comparison
talking
from
about the
10
current.
days. Yeah, we
Because
will
I
give you
want to,
that.
I'd be curious to see how it's tracking moving forward. Maybe have they peaked and now it's
Well,
starting.
I mean,
And
I
it's a-
showed you the DeJong Healy projection for Gladwin, and then that hasn't changed, and we're right where we thought
Okay.
we would be.
Just
So the
curious.
expectation is that that's going to continue to grow. And we actually had a conversation yesterday about the portables. This is a conversation we're going to get into tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. at the facilities. But we did not over allocate additional classrooms to either of those schools. Like we're building just to try to fit everybody in as projected, and both of the schools, both the elementary schools that we're adding on to, are right where the projection said they would be.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for the lightning round on that presentation. Just a couple questions. You don't happen to know, I mean, I know you said it was just texted, but what Lower Merion's total is this year? You can peek. And the reason I ask, I mean, we're 10 students over in the high school from last year to this year.
Right.
Both high schools combined. According to the DeJong Healy estimates, we're going to be 30 greater at Harriton plus however many the differences between the projection and what this year's enrollment, do you have it?
Yeah. Lower Merion High School is 13 kids above last year.
Yeah, what's the total?
Lower Merion
I believe it's
is 1,300.
1,300?
And Harriton is 1,185.
Okay, so we're talking 54, so the DeJong Healy is projecting 54 more students at the high school level next year, and we had only 10 students. Now, I know that
Right, I know,
fluctuates all
because you
over
have
the
to
place.
look at how many seniors were there, how many eighth graders were
Right,
there.
right,
So
so-
I don't have that all.
So, I mean, that's a big difference. So I'm just pointing out that, as we have said many, many times, projecting, the further out you project, the less accurate the projections are. And so.
Right, but they're so far accurate. I mean, so far, they've been.
So far,
accurate.
yeah, right, we're only
yeah.
2 years out.
Right, we're a little ahead of what they.
Well, overall in the district,
Yeah.
but not in the high school where
Correct.
where this pressing issue is. So You know, I just think we have to keep in mind that these numbers are not guarantees, and that, you know, the further out we go, and we're talking about the first time one of the buildings tips over 1,400 is 5 years out from now. So we're talking about numbers way out there.
No, excuse Diane, the Lower Marion High School tips over 1,400 sooner than that.
Oh, you know what, you're right, I'm sorry, I misstated. The first time Harriton tips over 1,400, yes, thank you for that correction. So, you know, that's 5 years out. The second thing, just to clarify, at Welsh Valley, we are building, what is it, 12 new classrooms. But that's not because we're having 12 new classrooms worth of new kids coming in. It's because, in part, some of the spaces that we've used in the past at Welsh Valley, the kids have been in hallways and in closets and in less than adequate space. And so part of those classrooms are to relieve the pressure on those inappropriate spaces, or I don't know what the correct term is.
Let's say less than ideal.
Less than ideal, much
But,
better term.
I mean, that's the same thing you know, yes, but we wouldn't go to a school like Walsh Valley and add on something and then ignore the fact that the kids going to meet with the gifted teacher had to go through the gym, or
Right.
you know, that kind of thing.
And I think
Right.
that's the correct
Right.
approach. I'm not questioning
Yeah.
that. I'm just pointing it out as,
Right. It's
it
not-
sounds like 12 new classrooms. Oh my gosh, if there's 20 kids in a classroom, that's 240 students more. That's a lot of kids more, and that's not exactly
Right.
how
But when you look
that's
at the
gra-
projection for Welsh Valley, they are expected to
Well,
grow.
yeah,
by-
but again, we're talking 5, 6, 7 years out where it's up 240 students. So we just don't, you know, these projections are not promises, they're just estimates.
Well, they're
They're
yes,
estimates
they're-
based on history. I mean,
Correct.
it's not like they're pulled out of a hat and just
Right.
guesses.
right.
No, they're scientifically estimated.
Done by a company that does this kind of
Right,
thing.
but, you know, go to your stockbroker and ask him what the stock's going to be in a week, and he'll tell you what he thinks, and he's an expert, and he does it all the time, but he can't promise that it's right. So I'm just saying that there is not, these numbers are not certain, and particularly 5 years out, the certainty declines.
Can I just follow up on that for a second? Because the problem is that the numbers that are, the further out you get, they're less certain at the elementary level.
No, they're
because
less
those
certain all the
kids-
way around.
Because those kids haven't
No.
been born yet.
No,
Excuse me.
at the
You
high
have
school level, it
700
assumes
kids at Gladwin.
35 to 40 new students from outside the district every year at the high school level. If you look at the survival ratios, it jumps from 8th to 9th grade. It jumps from 2.2% between 7th and 8th grade, and 1% between 9th and 10th grade. It's 5.9% for 8th to 9th grade, and that's because we get kids in from outside the district. They're not in our buildings right
They're not
now.
necessarily
I'm
from
not
outside
saying
the
they're
district,
in-
they're not
I'm
in the
sorry.
school district.
Well, some of them are
Not
from
attending
outside.
the school.
Some of them are from outside the district, but right.
The
They're
numbers have been
moving
going
into our district.
up most significantly in the elementary schools. And if you look at the middle
But-
school projections, you were not talking about 5 years out. You were talking about, if you look at, although my eyesight, I have to tell you, at this point, this is a little bit small, but if you put that chart up on the middle school projections, the Welsh Valley middle school projections have jumped from, 925 up to close to 1,000 by 14, 15. You're not talking about 5 years out on the middle schools in terms of the numbers increasing. I can't look at the exact numbers, I apologize, it's too small. But if you put it up on the thing, you can see the general change. I'm just pointing out that this idea that somehow these enrollment projections are like, you have to base public policy on some kinds of studies. We have an external study, and we have two people who have supported that this is the right standard of practice. So, it's Dr. McGinley recommended to us well over a year ago to actually have this done because we couldn't understand why the internal numbers were so different than what we had expected.
I just return to my point that the further out you go, the less accurate the numbers are. And the high school numbers are going to be less accurate as well as the elementary school numbers. And I think it would behoove us to tread carefully, because if we make huge changes in, the worst case scenario would be to change the rules now and not have these kids, not have this growth the way it's projected, and then have a situation where Lower Merion High School is bursting at the seams and Harriton High School is under-enrolled. That would truly be a tragedy. So I'm just suggesting that we just tread a little more carefully. We're talking the projections don't show Harriton tipping over 1,400 until the year 1819. And if we phased it in, if we were to make this change and we phased it in starting in 1617, that would still get us enough kids that all we would have to do would be expand choice. If we needed more, we could expand choice to the entire district and allow the students who live on the western side the same opportunity to choose which school they went to as the students on the eastern side have. So we are not at a drop dead point right now, and I think I think we need to be very careful that we don't move too soon and create a bigger problem than what we might have. So, and that's all I have to say.
I want to, okay, I want to pick up on that point, but I also want to talk about the programmatic issues of waiting until 1617. That was something that came up at the meeting on Monday in terms of the impact on students and programs and facilities of not really planning thoughtfully for increased enrollment. I mean, we spent nearly $30 million on the middle schools. And so those children are here. They will be going into the high schools, whether we expand choice or not. So I'm interested in hearing about the practical impact on our students, facilities, and our teachers.
Well, I mean, we spent, I think, $25 million on elementary and middle schools, and we didn't spend it all yet, but we approved that.
Right. This board approved it.
This board approved it, yes, based on the projections that we have. And a look at what was the current enrollment. And we need those rooms. We absolutely need those rooms. What was said on Monday night was that planning programmatically and planning for facilities, that the longer time period we have to plan, the better off we are. That, you know, we realize that there are going to be issues that we encounter, but if we know in 2 years we need this and in 3 years we need that, we're better off. Now, if the plan is to build at both locations, and the sooner we know that, the better off we are too. But you know, we can plan. If there's a bigger Harriton High School, if the board elects to do that, have a bigger Harriton High School, we'll provide the same programs and services that we provide today, but we'll need more classrooms at Harriton, and we'll need more classrooms here, and there will be kids in this building. So it's a matter of one building project or two building projects, but programmatically, we'll do right by the kids, and the sooner we know what the vision of the board is, then the more effectively we can plan and organize that work.
Just a quick follow-up. Thank you, Dr. McGinley. We made decisions as a board based on Dijon Healy projections, and we've had 2 consultants look at those numbers and verify them based on their areas of expertise. So my sense is to call into question all of the numbers is problematic, and I want to go on the record to say that.
Let me just read a paragraph out of our consultant's report regarding accuracy. I'm not doing it for your benefit. I'm doing it for the benefit of the people who haven't read them. So in terms of accuracy, it says, and I'll cut out most of it. It says, we believe these provide a good guideline for planning purposes 1 year out within 1.5%, 3 years out within 2.9%, 5 years out within 4.8%. The consultant concurs that the use of plus or minus 3% per year as an average range rule of thumb. These estimates start in the year 2014-15, 2 years out of the original projection numbers subject to a plus or minus 2% accuracy. The final school year at 21-22 is 9 years out from the start of the projection and subject to a plus or minus 9% accuracy. So this is coming from our professional, this statement so it's not just me calling into question, I'm calling into question based on their statement regarding accuracy.
So for the last 2 years, we've run plus 1% in terms of increased enrollment. When Dijon Healy presented to the board, they talked about their industry standard being above many others in terms of their enrollment projections. And if I recall, it was plus or minus 1% on both sides for up to 3 years. So perhaps I misread something, but I do think we need to think about, we've made decisions based on this report. And so with that in mind, we can't just negate it right now because we disagree based on what the conversation is at the table.
And if I follow up on that, when we did the decision regarding the elementary schools, we saw the growth in those schools. And then we did an analysis as in terms of what would be the best outcome, what should we to alleviate those pressures, and then we made a decision. The fact that we have all these, we have the study, which the John Healy, which indicates that there's going to be growth in our district, that just identifies the issue that we're facing as a district. It doesn't lead us to what solution we should follow. Then, having identified what the problem is, now as a board, we need to explore every option out there to address that concern. And I think there are so many factors that come into play in making the correct decision, the one that is best for the district, that that we don't know at this point. We're dealing with another governmental entity which will dictate what we need to do in terms of to gain approval for whatever project we move forward to, and we don't even have a sense where that's going to lead. So worst case scenario, forget that the projections don't pan out. The worst case scenario, let's say we commit to expanding, opening up choice, which would then increase the number of students at Lower Merion. The issue then becomes, what after we make that decision, it comes out that it is so cost prohibitive that the township requires a parking garage, that traffic studies. There are a whole host of issues which may work out fine, but we don't know at this point. And let's say it doesn't work out, and now we're locked into this outcome, and then we have to come up with another alternative to move students around. And so the point is, as I see it, due to so many uncertainties as it relates to which alternative is ultimately adopted, there is time to do the proper analysis, to go through the township, to go through the proper channels, to find out what the planning commission would require of us, regardless of which option we chose, and then make the proper decision so the board's not prejudiced in any way or hurt in any way, or the students are hurt in any way, where this school, this side can't accommodate students that we committed can come here. So that's...
I have to say, I just don't understand your logic, quite frankly, because first of all, well, I'm sorry, Gary. I mean, if you're going to have these discussions, we're going to have them in public. First of all, if in fact you have asked, and I appreciate that you have asked for a better cost estimate of the cost of building at Harriton. Am I correct? That you were the one who requested that? I don't want to put...
You're incorrect.
You're not the person who...
On Harriton, you are incorrect.
Who requested that?
I don't know. I don't know.
I am very surprised. I don't understand.
You may be surprised. I did not request that I think Mr. Ganane drafted that letter report.
Right.
Not me. I don't know why you would think it was me.
Because I thought it was you with the list of questions that were addressed.
My questions pertained solely to Lower Merion. Since we had information on Harriton, we had absolutely zero information, zero on Lower Merion. So my list of questions, which were solely related to Lower Merion, were driven as a counter to the analysis that was done for Harriton. So that's incorrect.
Okay, I apologize for that. So, and Jerry's not here to say if that was his, I mean, somebody asked those questions, am I correct?
Well, why don't you ask Dr. McGinn?
Well, I did.
Because I didn't.
Okay,
I don't remember who asked them. I mean,
Okay.
months ago.
all right.
There were a lot of questions asked. We've done our best to provide that information. And
I've
we'll
got it.
provide
I
tomorrow
understand.
morning.
I just recall a list of questions that Gary had. So I apologize if you're not the person. I don't know who asked those questions. So the point is that tomorrow we're supposed to be getting a report on the cost, essentially a cost-benefit analysis of of building at Harrington. Am I not correct that that's what you're reporting tomorrow, that that's one of the things?
It's one of the things that we're reporting.
Okay, so okay. So, you know, if you're actually talking about building at Harrington as one possible way to deal with the increased numbers of students, regardless of who asks questions, as you well know, we can't build a building like that, right? We actually have to plan in advance to be able to build the building, correctly? I mean, am I correct about that? You don't build a building overnight. Right. No one's gonna disagree with that. Okay, so,
How long Arnold Field took.
So you're in a situation where you, at this point in time, you know, to have the conversation, you start a conversation around what are you going to do about the numbers, the projected increased numbers, which based on the fact that we've built at the elementary schools and we've built at the middle schools, we have some sense that those numbers were based on, you know, are more accurate than likely not to be accurate, in the sense that it's very unlikely that all of these kids somehow go move someplace else at this point. I mean, we're dealing with increased numbers of students. Nobody's denying that we're dealing with increased numbers of students. So to have a conversation now about what are you going to do with those increased students if you don't actually want to increase class sizes and you don't want to shift, you know, change the programs radically. You're having a conversation now which says you either build at Harrington, you slowly move, you know, get some of those kids who would normally be going to Harrington under the current conditions, and you slowly get them over to Lower Merion. Or when the numbers hit where they are and you haven't built the building, you have to redistrict. I mean, if you don't have a building at Harrington, if you don't have a way of accommodating a large group of kids at Harrington, you're going to have to move the kids over to Lower Merion if you use those things. Those are the options that we're talking about.
And in response to your comments, and I don't have the John Healy numbers in front of me, but I think it was 17, 18 before it tips over. So you have a year to do better planning. And in terms of the cost benefit, because the students are not going, Harrington's not going to hit that critical point till, I think, was it 17, 18?
18, 19.
18, 19. Lower Merion, it's been told we have classes that we could use here, 8 classrooms, I think you said, Mr. Hughes said. In terms of the cost benefit analysis, I mean, having been on the board, gone through a lot of construction projects, and what happens at this point before you start going through the planning process with the township is vastly different. Where you are now and where you end up, and the requirements that can be imposed, the costs that can be associated with that.
At either school.
So to do a cost-benefit analysis on preliminary discussions with the township, where I think they only, and correct me if I'm wrong, have only been held with their administrators, once their leadership gets involved, there's no idea where that will lead us. And that's what I'm saying. At this point, even with the numbers I'm going to assume we're going to get tomorrow, we don't know. It's based on conjecture in terms of what ultimately we're going to be required to do if we expand this campus to certain levels. And I'm saying,
right.
so, and I just want to
I'm
say
a little-
one,
I would like to have-
and I want to add one other thing, because I think, to me, this is important. We were about to vote on this issue, not once, but twice, before we had any of the information regarding the costs associated with, first with Harrington, and then that letter came out. And then second, before I raised the questions regarding what the cost associated with this facility was going to be. So we were going to make a decision, go full speed ahead, without really understanding the cost and the of the two options. Plus, you know, and once you compare the numbers, then you're able to see, okay, which is more expensive, which, you know, you compare the cost, but also compare the functionality of the two buildings after you make that decision. So there's a long process, to me, to make sure that we end up with the best facility for our students, so the programming is can be provided for them in the best manner.
Okay, I appreciate that, but first of all, I'd like to hear at the committee meeting tomorrow what the township requirements are for fixing up the 21 classrooms that are here, because my understanding of the way it works is that actually isn't under their purview. Secondly, so okay, so you're concerned about the decision-making process at this time. When you talk about the costs of updating 21 classrooms versus starting another construction project. Okay, and if I recall, you were concerned, and again, maybe got you confused around the issue of temporary.
And I corrected you once before on this, and you keep doing it,
right,
and
you
you keep
had
doing
no-
it.
you
It's
were-
Jerry Novick raised the issue.
But,
I asked
okay.
questions about it. Jerry,
Well, you had talked to me about-
you keep attributing that to me, and that's, once
Okay,
again,
you had
incorrect.
never concerns around
I
building at Gladwin.
raised the issue whether temporaries would be an option.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You did
But
raise the issue. Okay,
No,
fine.
no. Jerry raised the issue. I participated in the discussion and
Okay.
felt that was an alternative that maybe we should explore more. I did
Right.
not raise the issue on that, and I didn't raise the issue
Right.
on Harridan, and whatever
Okay.
else you want to attribute to me, I'm sure I didn't
Okay.
do that either. But I
Okay.
did do Lower Merion, because no one else did.
So the point being that that actually creating a new construction at Harriton, when you're talking, is going to be more costly. There's no question it's going to be more costly than actually renovating buildings.
And,
at
and
Lower
that's where you're
Merion.
incorrect, because you're looking at.
Really?
Yes, because you're looking at a piece of the puzzle, Melissa. You're thinking, this building, this building. How about all the other costs associated with what we would have to do with this property? What about the possibility? Who knows what's going to happen with parking? We may lose a field because we have to have parking. There are so many additional items that need to be addressed in terms of upgrading sign slabs. I think we raised that.
We've talked about that.
Because I raised the issue in my
Yeah,
comment.
we asked, that's
wait,
not
hold on for
true.
a second.
That is absolutely not true.
The science lab issue was an issue the administration brought to the table. And we talked with both high school principals about the fact that we're already tight on science labs. The time in science labs is tight because we have a lot of labs and we don't want to modify the program. We want to continue to have the labs. So as the high school population grows, we know we're going to have science labs. So we're either building 4 in this building, or some in this building, and some in addition to Harriton. But we know we need science labs, and you used the word that our work on facilities planning is conjecture. That's disrespectful. It's not conjecture.
First of
It's
all, you're
thoughtful. You said that a minute ago.
I said what the township made.
You said you used the word conjecture referencing our work, and it's not appreciated, and it's disrespectful.
Well, once again, that's incorrect. What I said was, it was
You
conjecture.
just said it 5 minutes ago.
I said, well, listen to the tape. What I said was conjecture what the township will expect from us. That's what I said. We don't know at this point what they're going to expect from us. That's what I
Gary,
said.
could I just jump in a minute and try to, if we reflect on the process with the elementary schools and middle schools, I think it was very similar, and we considered a range of options. We talked about trailers, I forget what the modular classroom.
Portable
And-
classroom.
And some of that was a cost issue, and some of it was what in political science we call a value issue, meaning ultimately we did not think that was the best pedagogical or holistic approach to educating our children to have them in permanent modular classrooms, and we opted for construction. So we've had a very similar healthy discussion on the high schools, and I think that we have considered all the options, and we've vetted them just like we did with the elementary schools and the middle schools, and so I feel quite comfortable with that process.
We haven't vetted anything in terms of the cost of the two projects. I don't even know how you can compare, quite honestly. Tomorrow is the first time we're going to get dollars and cents related to the two options. So we haven't had any vetting, and we were going to vote on this before we had that vetting. When we did the elementary school,
Lots
when we
of
did the elementary
modifications to
schools.
those, the proposal from the Welsh Valley looks quite different than the original proposal
I'm
that
talking
Pat
about the high
presented to
schools.
us.
I'm talking about the high
I'm
schools.
talking about the elementary.
You said we've done the same process for the high schools, and I guess I respectfully disagree that we haven't done the same process. We're beginning to do that, and that's what the facilities meeting hopefully will bring to light information regarding the cost, the total cost, not just the building versus building, but the total cost associated with utilizing each of the two sites, and then be able to do a comparison of those two, plus also analyzing whether there are any intangible benefits of choosing one location over another location. That's the vetting that I would like to see, and I think that it can't be accomplished in such a short period of time, and I think we should do it right and thorough, not that you're not doing it, but that we as a board should do that. There's a lot of information that we need to process before an ultimate decision can be made.
And I
That's my
think-
only opinion.
Just two quick points on that. One is, there are other costs besides just the cost of building at Harriton or renovating here. There's also the cost of Right now, there are offices in the spaces that we're talking about using for classrooms. So we have to talk about the cost of moving those offices to another space. And that is, again, costs that would factor into the cost of doing construction here as opposed to doing construction there. I still think, personally, we have the space here. If we have an overpopulation issue, in my opinion, from what I know right now, I believe that moving the students here is the answer. But the issue still becomes the timing of it. And while we've looked at a couple of scenarios, really, we haven't. We've looked at either changing the choice area or not changing the choice area. We have not looked at changing the choice area 2 years from now rather than now. We haven't looked at what that impact is on the numbers, what that impact is on planning. So there's at least one other option that I would like considered that we have not looked at yet. Furthermore, I'm looking at the Sundance chart, and it says that in 2018-19, Harriton, according to the DeJong-Healy report, Harriton will be over 1,400, it'll be 1,459. That's in 2018-19. If we expand the choice and the kids choose 60-40, then the following year, while 2018-19 will be under 1,400 at Harriton, the following year it'll be over 1,400. So if the kids choose at 50-50, then it'll be 2018-19 would be the original DeJong-Healy tipping over 1,400. It only buys us 2 years before Harriton again tips over 1,400. So I think this issue is you know, I heard what you said about the longer out we plan, the better off we are. I think that's up to a point. I mean, because if we want to plan there, if you go out to 21, 22, the numbers are, you know, much, much higher. Maybe we should be planning for 21, 22 and not for 18, 19. I mean, it's like, so my feeling is if we give the district a chance to settle a little bit, 5 years ago we had the redistricting, and that changed the way the feeder patterns and the perceptions. It changed a lot about what the offerings were at Harriton, and it really improved the balance of education between the two buildings. And so a lot more kids started going to Harriton. So those numbers, now that we've been there 4 years, this is the 5th year, we're kind of settling out to see what the natural pattern is based on what we currently have. The second thing is, 5 years ago, the economy plunged. And while you know, you'll talk to economists, it's not back to where we want it yet, certainly it's on the upswing, and in Lower Merion, it's definitely on the upswing. And so all the students that stopped going to private schools during that period of time are now going, anecdotally, it appears they're going back in. The private schools are now attracting students again. So our numbers may drop, you know, it may distort our numbers again. So I'm just saying that I think we have a couple of years in these numbers, as they are presented to us, to give a more thoughtful, careful timing of when we make this decision. And I think to do it now gives some, you know, sense of, you know, that's how it's going to be in the future, and security, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. It doesn't necessarily, it won't necessarily solve our problems. I think we need to wait a couple of years and see how it plays out.
Well, I think it's interesting you've pointed out that over time the numbers at Harriton, you know, even if you expand choice, you're still going to have increasing number of kids at Harriton. I mean, actually, I've heard people so concerned that you're going to go to the 25-75, but actually that would solve that problem. I don't think that's where you're going to go, but it would actually solve that problem.
It would.
I mean, so that's a whole other story. I don't think
Right,
that's where
but
it's
that's
gonna
not
go.
something we can count on. Whereas
No,
if
it's
we
not
wait a
something
couple
we
more
can.
years and see how things
Well, I
balance
disagree
out,
with you,
we'll have a
because I
better
think the
sense.
problem is the longer you wait, the more likely you are into a situation, because I don't actually think we are going to be building at Harriton, because I think that given the numbers that we have and the budget that we have, that, you know, that if you do a cost-benefit analysis and that analysis shows that building at Harriton would be more expensive, and you can talk about how you would define that, you know, as you have to pay for increasing numbers of teachers, and as you have to deal with the Common Core and the amount of professional development we need, there are, you know, if we had endless money, that might be a reasonable conversation. I don't personally, and people can disagree with that, I don't personally think that's the right use of resources. I'm not asking, you don't have to agree or disagree with that. It's my personal feeling that the use of resources is better put into, you know, teachers and professional development, given that we are in an Act 1 environment. That, you know, regardless of that, if you actually wait, you are going to be into a situation in which you are going to have to redistrict. That is, you are going to have to compel.
Can you please explain that? Because I'm looking at these numbers, and if you look at the expanded choice numbers, it looks like it's roughly 50 students a year in the expanded choice, which, you know, if you apply the 60-40, 50-50 to those students, it takes 2 years to bring the numbers back in line. It doesn't take 4 years to bring the numbers back in line. So I mean, we could if in a year and a half from now or 2 years from now, we see that the numbers are holding the way the projections suggest, then we can, in 2 years, with doing nothing other than expanding choice, we can rebalance the schools.
It depends how many kids choose, and that's the issue with choice. The issue with choice is you're not compelling kids. You're giving kids a choice. So some kids will choose and other kids won't choose. I mean, you can't guarantee, as you well know, as everybody's discussing, you can't know exactly how many kids are going to choose one way or another. If you do it gradually, because I will tell you that, you know, I lived through the last redistricting. I know that, you know, you were on the board during the last redistricting. That wasn't particularly pleasant. Okay? So, and frankly, to me, it is a better from a public policy community standpoint, where the previous redistricting was, you know, pitted community against community in ways that one might not think you would want to repeat, okay? That you would be better off doing it gradually without going and most likely telling the same group of kids, because they live closer to Harriton, they also live closer to Lower Merion, that, you know, the kids who you took away choice last time, now you're going to tell them to go back to Lower Merion.
From a public policy point of view, would it be better to provide the same opportunity to every student in the district rather than just some?
You could also do a major.
Perhaps one way to get more students at LM, if we see ourselves in that predicament, is to open choice up to the entire district. The way right now it is from.
And we may need to have that conversation, Diane, for exactly the point that you pointed out, which is it may not be, if you expand choice to this small group of kids, it may not actually be enough. So you may actually have to expand choice further. You also could do a K through 12 redistricting, which frankly doesn't sound particularly appealing. So, I mean, there's a lot of what I would call radical, and I don't mean radical crazy, radical as in large change. There are large changes you could consider. You could go to a completely K through 12 redistricting. You could go and offer everybody choice. You could have one high school and have half the kids at one school and half the kids at other. There are lots of choices you could make to change this situation that might actually, you know, be longer term choices, but they're pretty major decisions. And like I said, having been, you know, lived through the last redistricting, those kinds of major decisions tend to actually throw the community, you know, into a bit of a tizzy.
If we expand choice into Ardmore and Narberth, the way back to where it was before redistricting, okay, do you think there's going to be more students at LM or fewer?
I think there will.
I mean, I would argue that 60-40 is a best case scenario and highly unlikely that 60% of that expanded choice area would go to Harriton and 40% would choose LM. I think it's more likely 40% are going to go to Harriton and 60% are going to go to Lower Merion.
In which case it goes against, that actually supports your own argument that it'll take longer to get there and you won't have to make as many changes. It does actually, Diane.
It'll take longer to get there.
It'll take long. Your argument is that if you actually
it'll take longer for Harriton to tip over 1,400. That's right. That's why I'm saying wait. That's why I'm saying if we wait, and then when we
Okay.
do open it up, we're going to get the number, we're going to get the splits we need. I mean, I just, just historical knowledge of how people split prior to the redistricting, even the way people talk right now.
No,
I mean,
actually-
people are
actually-
talking about they want us to do this now because they want the chance to go to LM.
I
So
understand,
people
but-
are talking about doing it already. So
There
I
are
don't
people
think we're
talking
going to have
about already,
trouble.
but those of us who actually have children in that grade, in those schools, will actually know that a lot of the kids have been going to Harriton, and they've been going to Harriton because, in part, because of the way Harriton has changed, and in part because Scott Eveslage is there now. I mean, there's been changes at Harriton that actually suggest that, you're going to actually have to expand choice further out to get more kids there. So the point is, you can't know. I agree that you can't actually know. So I agree that you can't know exactly how many, and we're going to have to be, flexible as we move forward around that. But I don't think, I personally am not looking for a solution that is actually going to radically change the way we, do school boundaries, either by completely opening it up and anybody can go anywhere, or having to do a K through 12 redistricting, at this point. Now, again, other people can feel differently, and that's completely fine. But if you're asking me why would you do this now, the reason to do it now is to actually avoid a more, I'm sorry for using the term, a more substantive kind of decision that you're going to have to make around redistricting in a few years. I mean, it is what it is. The kids are, there are the numbers. You're building at the elementary and middle schools. You're going to have to do something at the high schools. You're going to be using this building in, what, two years, no matter what. So it's just, why actually take the risk of having to go through a major redistricting that is actually compelling kids as opposed to expanding choice? I mean, philosophically, I'm much more comfortable with expanding choice than through, going through and having to compel another group of kids to go to a school. It really wasn't very pleasant.
A little off different topic. You raised the issue about the budget and how we can't afford a hit to the budget. The current projects that we're undertaking with the middle schools and the elementary schools, $25 million. The introduction of the debt service into our operating budget by Mr. Orlando was such that the impact, as I say it, it's $8, $9. It's minimal. So if we could structure whatever monies we need to borrow for any construction project, it will not hit the budget the way you think it's going to hit the budget, because it's going to step in for expiring debt, and we're only going to book the interest payments up until a certain point in time. So I'm not as concerned, because I ran some numbers to try to estimate the actual dollar impact, and you're looking
Well,
at.
if
I think the
frankly-
I think the debt service total, it was roughly $250,000 for each of the.
Well, frankly,
borrowings,
if
the
we
10
have a lot of,
borrowings.
if we
I'm
had a
not-
lot of money, I'm just saying, if we had a lot of money that we could, do more building at this point, frankly, I would have had a larger conversation and done something about Welsh Valley, because we've been adding, we've been fixing and adding to Welsh Valley in ways, to make it as equivalent as possible to Ballackinwood, but it's not, and we're all aware of that. So, I mean, if we had all the money in the world to start doing major building projects that aren't absolutely necessary, then why didn't we have a conversation about Welsh Valley?
Regardless of
Just-
which alternative we ultimately select, we are going to be borrowing money. No ifs, ands, or buts. And at this point, we don't know what the borrowing will be for this school, and we're not sure what it'll be at Harriton, but we are going to be borrowing money. And Welsh Valley is not even part of the equation. We will be borrowing money. So the question then becomes, if you think that one may have a greater impact on the budget, based on what Mr. Orlando was able to accomplish and the way he structured the introduction of the debt, it will not have that substantial impact that I think maybe you think it will have. It'll have a minimal impact and will not compromise our ability to add additional teachers as the student population grows and improve our curriculum, because those dollars will not be diverted off to paying debt service.
Yeah, I mean, the cost of building, whether we build just here, I mean, not build, but renovate here, or we renovate some here and build over at Harriton, is not the big driver in the equation. The big driver is adding so many teachers every year. So, we added a whole lot of professional staff this year, and that's the bigger cost. And those people that we added this year are going to be with us for years to come. We'll be adding next year. We added, the last 3 years, we added all those positions. That's the bigger driver. What happens, though, is that there's no allowance under Act 1 for the fact that your enrollment is growing. And so since the salaries and benefits are and retirement costs are going to eat up whatever tax increase we can give under the authority in Act 1, it just creates a squeeze. So while the dollar amount may not be great per household, it's a chunk of our budget that's coming from somewhere. So it comes from somewhere, and we're trying not to have it come from the schools. And we've already taken a lot of chunks out of the other budgets that aren't school-based over the last 5 years.
But a couple of things, and I'll go back. The introduction of additional expense was for $10 million. I think it was $250,000 each year on a budget that's what, $225 million. So to me, it's a lot of money, but overall, as a percent of the overall budget, not significant.
Right.
And then we've undertaken steps in the past few years to meet the rising costs associated with PSERS. We have money in a designated fund balance, don't we, to help alleviate when the percentages increase. And in the past couple of years, the actual expenditures compared to budgeted have come in, my word, not, I'll just say less than.
You should.
And enabled us to increase our fund balance. So, I would think, based on the fact that the actual expenditures are that much less than budgeted, that there's room to meet the needs of a growing student population.
And I know that you understand the budget well, but so much of the budget is predetermined that our ability to move dollars around and come up with that next 250, it is very tight, because so much of it is already committed in previous debt service that we have lots of, a really high percentage of, and then salary and benefits. That's where the bulk of the money goes, and utility costs. And so our ability to say we're going to take this money from the curriculum budget, or this money for staff development, or this money for teacher training, it's a really small bit of that huge budget. We have a huge budget, absolutely, but the part that's flexible is really, really tiny. And I just want to go back to one issue that Diane raised about the offices. When we talk about over the next 5 years, we're still talking about being able to accommodate the offices that we have here, not moving people more than what we would move to like available space over on Rock Hill Road. We're not talking about moving all the offices out. We're talking about rooms like this and rooms like, where Terry Quinlan is across the hall and where the registration is. We're assuming those things are staying. When we give that number of 21 classrooms, we're not vacating the building. There's a big building.
Jenny, can I just make one last comment? I don't mean to, sound Pollyanna-ish in this discussion, but if we step back, I know there are some people from the civics who don't have kids in the school right now, so aren't maybe as familiar with the issues. But to really simplify it, right, we have two amazing high schools, and when the merit semifinalist list comes out, we'll see that both schools have a lot of merit semifinalists. They were in the mainline Times, so I thought that was public information. But two wonderful high schools. Both schools are bigger, have more students than the board in 2008, 2009 anticipated or projected, right? There are just more students currently enrolled in public school in Lower Merion School District. And so it just seems to me like there's this very simple solution. We have this building, it has classrooms, and to use them just seems, maybe I'm oversimplifying, but like a very simple solution. And I think we've gotten a little bit maybe lost in the weeds tonight.
Thank you. Now, for someone if there's anyone in our audience that has questions or comments, you're welcome to do it at this time. You would ask that you would use the same format as when we have our general board meetings. You would state your name and your affiliation, and then the question, you can sign in. The sign-in sheet is here. Please keep in mind that there's a 3-minute time, and Vic is keeping the time for us. You may go.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Dan DeQuilla from Wynwood Civic Association, president of Wynwood Civic. I live in Wynwood. First question, just on, first, thank you for your time this evening, and also for the presentations on Monday evening. They're very informative. Just a question on process. So on the website, there was a calendar that was published that indicated week of 9/30, there would be joint meetings with the civic associations, namely North Ardmore, Ardmore, Wynwood, and Narberth. Is that still the plan? And if so, when would they reach out to us to coordinate those dates?
Yeah, we will be reaching out to coordinate with you. There were some date issues that we were trying to work through with the superintendent's office, but that, you can expect a call from us probably in the next 24 hours.
For that week?
Yes.
Okay, that'll be helpful.
The question is, are we still be able to do it that week? We may not. It may end up being the next week.
Correct. If we can't do it that week based on the
Yeah.
schedule, then we certainly would provide that opportunity.
Okay, but that's still the plan, and I'm assuming then we would then have access to the information that's going to be presented tomorrow at the facilities, because a lot of us won't be able to make that meeting, and I'm sure that's where a lot of the information that's going to be of value to us. All right, and then just some specific questions. This has probably been said, but I probably lost it somewhere along the line, but what is the percentage based on the choice area now, the split that's going between the two high schools over the last 3 years since the schools
Right
have been
now,
built?
the students who live in the walk zone, meaning kids that are not provided with transportation to high school at all, they have the option of electing to go to Harriton or Lower Merion. Right now, 60% of those kids are opting to go to Harriton over Lower Merion, even though they live within walking distance of LM.
Okay. I guess the other questions I have, and really a lot of them were summarized in a letter that was sent to the board back on the 10th of May from North Ardmore Civic Association, Wynwood Civic Association. So if we could, not to bog down this meeting, if a lot of those issues could be addressed maybe in our meeting that was scheduled on the week of the 30th, that would be really helpful. And I guess the last point I just wanted to make, I think people like choice. Choice is a good thing. But I guess we're just concerned about equal programming opportunities and facilities for both high schools. There was an effort to keep them equal. We'd like to keep them equal as much as possible within guidelines. So with the expansion of, or using the DAO or DAO building, dead on arrival, huh? What's it increase the Lower Merion High School population to, and what's it bring its max to?
I guess we didn't actually sit down and go 21 classrooms times 20 students would be the addition that we would add on to that. So it's about 400 more students would be the maximum.
Okay, and I guess we don't have to answer that now, but maybe in our follow-up meeting, does that grow proportionally the facilities and even the programs that would be offered on this, like a ratio of students per program? Would they stay within some realm of margin of error between the two schools? And would that be the target that you'd be shooting for?
That's really a hard thing to answer in a short response. I mean, our commitment is to make sure that we can always produce one course catalog for both high schools that guarantees the same set of opportunities. When you have a school that's larger than the other school, some things become more challenging, and then some things become easier. But the vision would be, the class sizes are comparable, all the same courses offered in both locations, all the same activities offered in both locations, and that's what we have achieved in the last few years since redistricting, and that's what we would try to guarantee.
And I can understand that.
I'm sorry, sir, but your 3 minutes is up. I apologize. We gave you a little bit more time, but can you finish that last thought? Thank you very much.
So I understand that, and I just think that as the populations grow farther apart, it becomes harder to do that. And based on some of these projections of 50-50 or 40-60, the differential becomes goes over 300 students, and then I think that becomes more of a challenge. And I think that's a bit of the concern. And lastly, the comment is, you have choice is good, that's flexibility, and everyone says how difficult it is to redistrict, but it seems to me the more choice, we want to make sure that this is the right thing to do, because if you had more choice now, more flexibility, you may have to take that away later if things don't go in the way that we had planned the facility investment. So it's to
Thank
the
you.
one comment.
Thank you.
Wait, thanks.
Yes, you forfeited
Ruth
1 minute.
Jenkins.
Hold on, Ms. Jenkins. Just the facilities committee meeting that we're having tomorrow will be taped and televised, and then we will certainly, when that meeting gets arranged, we'll share that information as well. And you have your full 3 minutes. You're not allowed to. You're not actually allowed to yield time. So
We could redistrict the timing. The remark that this is the logical thing to do because it's the easiest thing to do, because we already have this building, doesn't really take into consideration the increase in traffic and activity around the school for the people who live around the school. Yesterday, a comment was made also about the kids going across the street to the Arnold Field. Oh, they go across the street to Arnold Field. Well, my heart is, pounding every time I see that group of students going across. All you need is one student to make one mistake or one driver to jump a light. It has been, it is something that we have been very lucky about, that those students that do cross this street do make it across the street and back. And again, to have them, and I was looking at, where are they going to come into this building? Where is the protection? Where is the coverage? Has that been factored out and costed out in terms of getting them from one building to the other building? And again, as Dan mentioned, we had agreed to 2 equal high schools, and that's what we had agreed to. The other thing, one other comment that I made last night was that there are 38 students in the Spanish class at BC. How
No,
come?
we're not allowed to interrupt, but my daughter is in your grandson's Spanish class, and she confirmed that number.
Okay, thank you.
34, I think.
Yes, and it's same in the other one, and I don't understand that. Thank you.
Dr. Marseille is anxious to comment on that, but just we will tomorrow discuss coming from the main building to this building, and we will discuss the covered walkway option for this building. So that is something that's going to come up at facilities tomorrow. Dr. Marseille?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that. Last night when that was mentioned, which I was unaware of.
It was Monday night.
Yes. Apologize. Seemed like yesterday. Yes, it was. When those numbers came up, I did contact Mr. Potton to verify those numbers, and I'm not sure what happened between then and now, but we have 3 classes of 30 students in Spanish. So that number of 38 did not match what Mr. Potton gave me, and the number of 34 that was mentioned today, I don't know if it grew from Monday night to 4 today, but I was told that those numbers were at 30. I will check again tonight.
There's I talked to at open house, the teacher is fine. That she has a Temple University student helper, so there was no, I was just trying to be friendly to Ms. Jenkins.
Dr. Marseille will still follow up, though. It's not our practice to have 38 kids or 34 kids in a Spanish class.
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, I'll be brief. Hi, my name is Brody Stevens. I live on Schoolhouse Lane, right across from the school. And one thing that's just unclear to me a little bit, based on the projections that are here for the for even including choice, is that the decision about choice versus building at Harriton has been put in the context of either or. I think you were saying that. And one thing that's not clear to me is when you take into account the plus and minus on the numbers, you may be tipping at Harriton and perhaps by as much as 5 to 10%. You may be tipping by 2018, and you may be 5 to 10% at Harridan over in the next year or two after that. So, by expanding choice, which I'm not against that in any particular way, but it's just not clear to me, why aren't we talking about what we're doing at Harridan, at the same time? Because it may very well occur on the same time frame that you're gonna have it happen here. And when you take into account the plus or minus, so, I don't really know what we're, if we're really buying any time. It's just not clear to me that that's gonna happen. And so when you look at like 1377 for 50-50 on Harridan Lower Merion on 2018, I'm not a statistician, I'm a lawyer, but I think that it's not statistically significant to say that couldn't be over 1400. So, 1377 could be 1401, it's all the same from a statistics perspective. So it's just not clear to me why we're not talking about expanding Harridan at the same time right now. And then, I'm just interested to see about the facilities. Obviously, as a resident so close to the school, I'm very close to the intersection, the bus entrance from Montgomery, where Schoolhouse Lane is split. So just personally, I'm very interested to see how that will be developed, and the potential for, I know there's just going to be more students, more buses, more cars coming through that intersection, which we all know is a very dangerous place. But the residents of Schoolhouse Lane, that's the only way that we can get into our road. There's no traffic light there. Personally, I feel like that is a very unsafe situation there. So I would hope that maybe we can look at that. If we're going to increase traffic at the school, we can have another look at that intersection as well. So thank you.
Todd Sinai, Marion Station. So in the spirit of this being the communications committee, I actually had a few things that I wanted to say about communications. That were just things that were unclear to me on Monday night, and they were kind of unclear to me today, and I'm pretty deep in this, and I sort of figure out if I'm unclear about this, then these people might also be unclear. So the first thing is I'd like to underscore, I think, the need to put the 25-75 line scenario in the base table that you present. And I think there are a couple of reasons, okay? And I think the first is that the whole point of the base table is for dealing with uncertainty. We have two sources of uncertainty, things that we have any sort of uncertainness about, right? One is the underlying DeJong-Healy estimates. You guys discussed that at length. The other is conditional on the DeJong-Healy estimates. How many people, how do the students tilt in terms of the schools that they choose, right? Those are the two factors you have to deal with. And we basically have two historical data points on this, right? One is the current choices now, 60-40 towards Harridan under the smaller choice zone. And the other is the point from the old choice zone, the expanded choice zone that you're reverting back to, which was 75-25, with 75% going to Lower Merion, 25% going to Harridan. Everything else we're kind of just making up, right? Those are the two things we've ever seen. And the truth is, I probably believe it's not going to be better than 60-40 towards Harridan, and it's probably not going to be worse than 25-75. That's probably a pretty good bounds, and you should give us the bounds, and we can like make our own decision about where we think the world's going to end up in between those, but it will help us understand what the range of outcomes are. I think especially for people in the audience who I think are concerned about things like traffic, et cetera, those extreme outcomes, whether or not you think they're likely to happen, are ones where you get like 1,100 students at Harridan, and in 4 years you get like 1,750 students at Lower Merion under those scenarios. Now they may or may not happen, but we want to consider it, and I think it behooves you to help us with that. I think the second thing that would be useful to explain is the BC adjustment. Okay, I still don't understand how we're getting 15 additional students coming from Balakin with extra going to Harridan under it. I understand there's better programming, but if I look at the history that Dr. McGinley gave us in the spring, 16 students chose from BC chose to go to Harridan in 2010, and 13 students chose in 2013. There hasn't been a trend increase, even though the programming has been improving. It's been basically level, right? So that makes a difference, because the reason that we're all confused about how it is that we expand choice yet Harridan's still over capacity is because all the students that come in the choice zone that start choosing Lower Merion under the 60-40 assumption are offset by these additional 60 students that we've just out of thin air have magically assumed are going to go from BC to Harridan. okay? And so I'm not quite sure where that's coming from. That could be helpful to explain. And the last thing, I'm sure I'm out of time.
Yes, you are. Can you
okay.
finish your last statement?
Okay.
You can finish your last statement.
I thought it was great that you had Dr. Sundell review the estimate. I think it would be useful to clarify to the audience that what he did was he reviewed the estimate and he took as given the assumptions that were given to him by the administration. I think that's what his report said he did, right? And that wasn't clear at all to me. I thought he had done new analysis, but I think he just confirmed the existing analysis. He didn't validate the assumptions, he just took them as given. And if I'm wrong about that, that'd be really helpful to know. Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Susan Guthrie from Marion Station, and I'll sign in when I'm done for the interest of moving this along. I just want to provide some numbers that I think go to the discussion that Diane was having with Melissa regarding whether or not the kids are actually here or whether they're coming in the future. And to do that, I'd like to focus on the 2018-19 school year, which is the year that we expect, or under the DeJong-Healy projections, that Harriton will exceed the 1,400 capacity. And I want to point out that in the 2018-19 school year, the cohort of students in that year, this year, are in grades 4 through 7. And so now I'm going to speak about how many students there were, current 4th through 7th graders last year, because I don't have the 10-day enrollments by grade level this year. So if you look at how many students there were last year, that would have made them 3rd through 6th graders. Students currently enrolled in the school district who will be high school students in 2018-19, there were 1,233 in the Harriton feeder area. So that's Belmont Hills, Penn Valley, Gladwin, and a little bit of Welsh Valley. If you look at how many students are projected to be enrolled in high school in 2018-19, according to the Sundance rework of the DeJong-Healy numbers, that's 1,607 students. What that tells us is that between last year and 2018-19 school year, there will be 374 net new registrations. There have to be, in order for the projections to bear out, 374 net new registrations among the 4 grades for currently 4th through 7th. That's 374 net new registrations among a 4-year cohort of students who are now 4th through 7th graders. In contrast, for Lower Merion, if you do the same analysis, it's a net new registration of 177 students. So all told, for the DeJong-Healy projections to bear out between last year and 2018 for that cohort of students who will be in high school in 2018-19, net new additions of 551 registrations between last year and 2018-19 is 6 years. That's an awful lot of net new registrations for just 4 classes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to our communications meeting. Thank you for your participation. As you have heard, that we will continue with this consideration expanded choice timeline tomorrow at the Facilities Committee meeting. We will meet here in this room, and the next committee meeting, communications meeting, will be on Wednesday evening, October the 23rd. And with that, we are adjourned.